Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. I'm your host, Kim Droege, and we're so glad that you joined us today because we have another great episode coming up. And before we start the episode, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay, who provides my on-air wardrobe, including all my beautiful jewels that I get to wear, from the Spring Boutique, which is located at the corner of Swann and Henderson in Tampa. And I want you to go and shop at the Spring Boutique and the thrift store on North Willow, because all the net proceeds go to support the mission of the Spring of Tampa Bay, which is to provide sanctuary and services to survivors of domestic violence and their children. And they've been doing it a long time, and they do a great job, and I want you to make me happy and support them. So thanks. So we're so excited on Connecting with Kim today because we have a first-time guest. And she's a wonderful guest because I know her outside of the show. But we're here to talk about a very interesting topic too. So let me not delay and introduce you to Michele Smith, who is the Executive Director of the Tampa Arts Alliance. Welcome, Michele, to Connecting with Kim.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Oh, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and it's so wonderful to finally have you as a guest on my show. So, everyone who watches the show on a regular basis knows that I start off the show with allowing my guests to share as much as they want of their life journey, because you just never know when someone out there listening and watching shares something in common with you. And we want them to stay tuned to listen to watch the rest of what you have to say. So, take as much time as you like.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to cover,
I
so
know
I'll try to keep it to the to the concise version. I guess I can share how I got to be in this role and my professional career that brought me to this point.
Sure.
I've always had an interest in the arts. Growing up, I loved to dance, and I didn't actually start dancing until I was 19. And I went to the Tampa Ballet Academy Tuesday and Thursday nights. They were over on Beta Bay, and began to learn there as an adult, which was really challenging and really cool. And fun fact, my first teacher, Richard Plock, is still teaching at HCC in Ybor. So shout out
I've been to
to
that
him.
studio. That's
Isn't
wonderful.
it gorgeous?
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
So I went to HCC. I'm an HCC alumna. And actually, Christina Costa, who is the director of the dance program, I was there when she was hired, and our very first studio we danced in was probably about the size of this room, and we would literally have to go diagonally across the floor to practice our movements. And she has built an amazing program, and their facilities are phenomenal. So HCC is such a gem.
It is.
It really is. For high school, I grew up in Carrollwood, and I went to Academy of Health, which is over at the Tampa Bay Tech. I was the first crop of students, and we're actually still very in touch with each other, Facebook and social media. We were a bunch of nerds interested in the health occupations. I was a science fair nerd. I used to compete internationally in science fair, and we just had such a great time. And I came out of that school with my diploma and a certificate in dental lab, which I think is amazing that there are these schools now, like you're mentioning from a guest that you're having coming up. These schools are in our communities are really preparing children and young adults to go out in the world and function. So
yeah, magnet programs.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, they are.
We have to really support our public schools.
We do.
So I graduated from that school with a diploma, and then also as a dental lab tech, and I thought I wanted to be an oral surgeon. Until I started doing clinicals.
So you started actually looking at people's mouths, right?
Yes.
And they were like, maybe not.
The academics were fantastic, but doing clinicals and actually being in people's mouths, I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So that's when I went to HCC and really started being playful with my career and exploring what it is I wanted. And I was there for 6 years part-time. I was a full-time worker. At the same time, I started a job with Silk Loom with a really amazing Indian entrepreneur, Paul John. He had come to the States. He's a lawyer. He's very well accomplished in India and in other parts of the U.S. as well. And he went to start an import company, importing silk. And so he gave me the funds to do it, and I just started doing it.
There you go.
And it was so much fun. But I love the textures and really getting into that world. I think that was actually a big push for my arts craving, was beginning to work with designers and using the fabrics and selecting the fabrics and designing the fabrics. And then I was at HCC having fun. So I took dance and anthropology and theater and music and tons of sciences, lots of biology, microbiology, chemistry.
What an interesting combination. The arts and the sciences. There you
me.
go.
That is me in a nutshell.
Well-rounded.
So fast forward, that was a great experience with Paul. My next major job was doing marketing for a real estate, mixed-use real estate investment firm in South America, or Central America and Honduras, with Sofia Rivera. She's an amazing engineer and thinker, and she wanted to have a mixed-use, 400 homes plus a commercial section that was a new concept at the time for Honduras. Not in the resort areas, but in the center in San Pedro Sula. And that was so much fun to learn that business. And then also there was a lot of artistry there as well, with beginning to program and just even designing of the homes, and bringing in and the ordering of all the parts and being creative with how we shared the message of what this vision was, because at the time it was a plot of land in the rainforest. So that was a really cool experience. And then I started to go ahead and finish my degree at UT. So I'm a very proud Spartan. And even though I love the arts, I was like, oh, I'm never going to make any money. And so I was like, let me go into international business, because that's what I had been doing in my career. Let me just get a degree and be done with it. And I think that kind of, I don't want to say it was a betrayal of myself, but I think that's a really big spark for me right now for artists here, is I don't want them to betray their love and their passions, afraid that they can't make any money. So I think that very much informs how we build the arts up in Tampa and make sure that there are opportunities for artists to live and work here, and to have opportunities for commerce and for being able to keep practicing and honing their gifts and talents. But no regrets, because the education I got at UT was so phenomenal. I love international business. I really like working internationally. I went on to work for a French firm that was one of the oldest in the world. They're mentioned in Moby Dick.
Oh my gosh.
Bureau Veritas, and they actually do all the port inspections and shipping container inspections in the world. And I worked for them for a number of years, and again learned so much. But I felt very spiritually devoid, because I wasn't nurturing the arts.
You weren't nurturing the creative side.
Not at all. Not at all. I worked in oil and gas, and I would infuse a bit of creativity, in my events and stuff. But there's only so much you can do when you're when you're running emergency response during the oil spill, which is what I did. So anyway, I don't know if I'm talking too long, so let me know if we
Don't worry about it, because, I mean, somewhere along the way, I met you because you became the executive director of Tampa Tiger Bay Club.
Yes.
And that's how we first became acquainted.
Yeah.
And you did a fabulous job for us, but we understood that you really wanted to go back to this creative side of yourself and nurture that some more.
Yes. And so a really pivotal part of this story is that after I left the oil and gas industry, I had a life event that just really opened me up. My brother had a glioblastoma, a stage 4 tumor that popped up out of nowhere, and he was 42.
Wow.
And taking care of him in LA while also working my job in the East region and the Gulf of Mexico was exhausting. But it enlivened me to be in his world and to spend that time with him. And when he passed, it really made me calibrate my world around me and say, what am I doing and what matters to me? So I left the corporate world and went into yoga, because that's the only thing that felt good.
And I totally understand that, because I'm a yogi.
Are you?
Absolutely. I took long story short, my girlfriend called me when I was up north at the beach house, and she said, because I was a snowbird, and she said to me, Kim, this place has opened up in our community, and when you come back, they're offering yoga classes, and I want you to go with me. And I said to her, only because I love you so much will I agree to do this, because I had dabbled in yoga on and off, and at that time, yoga was more about achieving the perfect asana, the perfect posture, and that's not, yoga's a journey. It's not an end destination, right?
Yeah.
So I'd never really, so I took this, I went with her to take this class with this wonderful woman named Valora Peacock. Now, can you get a better name? Yeah, Valora Peacock. And I loved it because Valora was just so spiritual, and on top of that, she was closer to my age, so I was like, yeah, I can identify with it.
Yeah.
And it was like she reached in and flipped the switch. You know, and my girlfriend dropped out of the classes, and I began a lifelong journey with yoga. I was in yoga teacher training when my husband passed away. I mean, that's how crazy I was about it.
That's how I got into my teacher training, because while I was taking care of my brother, I wanted something that was for me. I had no desire to teach. There was no way I was going to get up in front of a class of people and be like, look at my body and do what I do, you know? But after he passed and I was trying to figure out what felt good in life, that was it. And then I realized from the classes that I had that people were craving more instructors who looked like me.
Exactly.
That they could relate to. At the time in Tampa, I was one of 2 black yoga teachers, you know, as well. So it's just like there was this kind of like, okay, this is something different, and it was disarming. Is it disarming where people just feel comfortable?
They immediately feel comfortable.
Yeah, because it's like you don't have to.
Yeah, you're not looking like there's somebody on Yoga Journal.
Which I was in.
Yeah, I know you were.
You know?
But usually the people on Yoga Journal are just like, you know, they're on the cover. You know what I'm saying?
And that was such a fun thing to push those boundaries. I was also the first yoga teacher that I know of to teach for Lululemon who could not fit into their clothes. And it was at the time a really big deal because it was so stigmatizing, the controversy that used to be there.
Oh, yeah.
And I completely sold out. You know, it was a packed house, and it was just like, again, this new thing of like, oh, I can do this. And it's really important that in every part of our community and all of our businesses and all of our endeavors that we stand up and we let ourselves be visible, because you never know who else wants to be visible but maybe blocking themselves. And that company, Lululemon, has been a tremendous community, you know, attribute that I've seen since then. So you never know what happens when you
never know what happens. And that's why when we do this interview, we don't know how many people are out there listening. They're going to go, oh, well, it is possible to do all these things in your life and become the executive director of the Tampa Arts Alliance, which we probably should start talking about because it's kind of the focus of the show. So you have had, there's no question about, you have had a very varied educational path, you've had a very varied career, and all of these experiences and your involvement with yoga, which, I mean, we could spend a whole show just on that, all have brought you to this point you are today, right? I mean, so let's start with, you know, you became the executive director of Tampa Arts Alliance, and let's start everyone understanding what is Tampa Arts Alliance?
Yes, the Tampa Arts Alliance was born out of a need to really nurture the arts here and a desire. And I have been involved in the arts world here for the past 20 years when I wasn't traveling for work or whatever. And I've always wanted to see it be more than it was. And we have some leaders here who are really passionate about that too, who finally said, okay, we're going to do what we can to help spur this on because our city is developing so quickly that we need to have some focused, concerted effort on this topic and hopefully unite all of these leaders and all of these different bodies together to be able to build this economic engine that is the arts and sustain it. So I remember I first got a taste of this in 2019 when Neil Gobioff from the Gobioff Foundation and Bill Carlson from Tucker Hall, they hosted an artist event at Tampa Museum of Art. And at the time I was working at the Downtown Partnership, and part of my role was nurturing the arts in the downtown area. And I went to that and I was like, oh my goodness, somebody cares. Yeah. It was such a great event. It was packed with artists and there was all of this energy, and it just felt amazing. And so I felt really energized, and I also thought to myself, I want to work with them someday. And it just kind of built on its own and developed naturally. And around 2020, when the world was shut down, I just kind of started focusing on my intention again on what feels good. And I think that it's so important for people to allow themselves permission to do that. You know?
It really is, and it's a hard lesson to get them to embrace. I think it's getting easier, and I think that I think the pandemic actually helped with that. I think that, you know, out of every bad situation always comes something good. And I think as painful as the pandemic was and all the hardships and whatnot, and we certainly don't want to minimize those, a lot of good things have come out of the pandemic. And I think one of the things that came out of it was people understanding the priorities in their life differently. And
enjoying life.
And enjoying life and what makes me feel good. What
And
do I want to be focusing my time and attention on?
Exactly, because we kind of had like an elimination diet for our lives when we were kind of locked down. And then you come in and then you start layering things back in, and you know very quickly what you have an allergy to and then what feels really good. And so many people were craving the arts more because we all began to realize how important it is, especially when we didn't have access to being together in a room or to sing a show. It was just
going to a concert, you know, any kind of performance. Well, if you're just joining us now and connecting with Kim, my guest in the chair is Michele Smith, who is the executive director of the Tampa Arts Alliance. Now, the word alliance, you know, to me means it's comprising of several different things, right? Okay, so explain to me what comprises the Arts Alliance.
Well, our role is to really help unite all these different parts of the arts in Tampa. We've got a lot of great leaders that have been existing here, both in municipalities and the government, also independently, grassroots organizations. And so that's kind of what we hold the space for as being an alliance, which is just a collaborative body. And then to very earnestly shine a light on what's happening here, because so many people don't realize how much talent we've got here, as well as how much stuff there is to do, because we're a very spread out city. Right. So, but there's, especially in the urban core, there's just really a lot bubbling up. And so that's our role, is to shine a light on that.
So you're shining a light on the visual arts, the performing arts. Help me understand the whatever else. To me, there's visual and the performing, and there's probably something else beyond that.
Yes, and I also want to clarify, it's a mindset that we're in a culture shift that we are really helping to egg along, right? And a kind of a branding too of our city. I mean, it was just listed in the Times as the best place to be, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've really embraced community aspects here, and the arts are a big part of that. So when I say a mindset shift, we're thinking about really letting people have the arts in the forefront of their minds. So for instance, what you all do here with TBAE, it's so important. It's a nurturing place for the arts. You highlight the arts, you focus on the arts, you nurture talent, you give work to talent. I mean, it's a really big deal.
And we educate.
And you educate, right?
I mean, it's part of our name. And they do a great job. I'm so thrilled to be part of this family, and I consider it a family. And it was like a watershed moment in my life when I came to TBAE. And I've just loved every single second of it. Well, and this brings me back to, you know, you just talked about Tampa being named one of the best cities to live in the country. And those of us who live here know that is true. I always call it our corner of paradise because it is. And so, and if you look at it, we do have a lot of, when I moved here, when I became a snowbird here, I've always been traveling to Florida since I was 4 years old, but when I actually came to live here in 2005, I didn't realize how much there was available. You know, between like Clearwater all the way down to Sarasota, which I all consider part of Tampa Bay, and Pinellas County, and because St. Petersburg's always been a mecca for artists.
Well, that's actually been a growing thing, and a big spur of that was their St. Pete Arts Alliance. And when we were forming, we talked to, I'm completely blanking on his name, John, I can't remember his last name right now, but we talked to people who started that organization to kind of get some insight on what they did. these things are intentional in some way.
Yeah.
And it really does, part of the allure for artists in St. Pete 10, 15 years ago was the low cost of rent and the proximity to an urban core and the walkability. They have transit, so these are things that we can look at, and we are actively engaging and duplicating a lot of that within our own flavor.
Right.
So we focus primarily on Tampa because that's a really sizable chunk of
Well,
space.
it is called Tampa Arts Alliance. So
Exactly. But we work regionally, like we really appreciate and collaborate with the St. Pete Arts Alliance, Creative Pinellas, there's a Clearwater Arts Alliance, there's stuff going on in Sarasota, and Lakeland and in Pasco. There's just so much in the region, and the more Tampa can shine in the arts, it really does affect how the whole region rises up as well.
Well, and if you look at the development of a city, I mean, you know, in a region or an area, it kind of follows a path. I mean, first you have to bring people in, and they got to have work, right? And they got to have steady work, because they have to make an income and because they have to support their families. And then, you know, as things develop and you get a larger economic base, now you can start to focus on those things that go above and beyond just making a living, that make life worth living, right? So you start to focus on the arts, because to me, a community isn't really complete. It doesn't really rise to the level of world class if you don't have a thriving art scene. And by arts, I don't mean just we go to a nice museum and we see great art. I mean a thriving art scene that encompasses performing, visual, everything to do with the arts.
Yeah, and our standpoint, or at least what I stand for, is being able to incorporate that cultural mindset regardless of where you are economically. So I think it's really important that as we're going to not think that we have to get to a certain space to embrace the arts.
Right.
And a really great comparison is like Paris, right? So the way that they culturally think of how they plate their food, the arts are everywhere. It's intrinsic to everything that they do, the wayfinding signs. It's not even like a thing, you know, it's not even like the arts.
No, it's part of their soul.
It is.
It's part of their
soul. And I think that's something that Tampa can do as well. So as we're building, that's fine. We have got so much here, and there's so much we can incorporate on an individual, day-to-day context that is artful and creative. And I think that's very, very important. And then when you start to think that way, you begin to notice what's there. And our goal is to amplify it so that you notice it quicker. So there may be like a little tiny gallery around the corner that nobody knows about. And it's incredibly accessible because you don't have to get dressed up, and it's not a gala, and it's not anything fancy. It's just a place you can go to and experience something new on your walk home. You know, it's just, those are the kinds of things we want to shine a light on so that we are building that creative culture for everyone, and it's accessible and inclusive for everyone. The murals, we have so many murals here. There are walking tours that you can create yourself, and it's entirely free. We've got some great public art. The city of Tampa has over 800 pieces of public art that they maintain within the limits of Tampa.
I had no idea about that. That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
What an interesting statistic.
Yeah.
800 pieces. Well, you know, you mentioned Paris, and I used to live in Europe, so I've been to Paris a lot. But one of my favorite things about Paris is the left bank, because I have a picture I bought off a street artist hanging in my home, piece of art that I see every day, and it is so important to me to. I have several pieces, but that I bought when I was there, but you know, this one is. I mean, I see it every day. I put it in a prominent place where I see that every day, because looking at that makes me happy. Takes me back to a great time. And you're right. There's never a view in Paris that isn't great. I mean, there's just not. I'm sorry. There's just not. It's always a beautiful view. I don't care where you're looking.
And so much of that is here and Tampa as well. When we really start to look through the lens of not instead of like what's missing in the arts community. I think in the past couple of decades, I hear a lot of conversation about what's missing or what we're not doing right or what's not. And if we start to shift our mindset and look at, I mean, there's so much beauty that surrounds us. The Riverwalk.
The Riverwalk. I was just going to, well, it's kind of like it's like a left bank, but it's called the Riverwalk.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
And then activating that. And so what we want to do is to just, you know, instill a little bit more of this and more awareness of what's happening here. We've got world-class museums and institutions that are here that sometimes people don't even know about. You know, graphic studio is a really great idea, USF CAM. I mean, it's one of my favorite places. It's nourishing. Then one of my favorite galleries is Parachute Gallery. They're at the historic Ybor Crest building. They're a small gallery, probably less than the size of this room, but it's a nourishing space. It feels fantastic. Dance, we've got so many. There's, Poetica. I love them. They're a small dance company. They host a free dance in the park on Tuesdays, every other Tuesday at Waterworks Park. And, you know, it's by donation or free, and it's just amazing. It's a very small dance company, but they do really cool things. And we've got all of these little vignettes and all these like little spaces that are available to everyone. We just want to make sure people know about it.
So
and
we're almost out of time. So let me ask you, how are you funded? I think people might want to know that.
We are currently funded by private donations. So we are not funded by any kind of tax dollars. Maybe that will come in the future. We have a lot of really big projects that are coming up, so that do require, for instance, our Art Space project, which is about building affordable housing for artists, will have components of not only private dollars, but probably low-income tax credits as well to be able to make that, you know, into a reality. But we appreciate how vibrant the public has been with supporting us.
Well, we are almost out of time, and I mean, you have to come back because honestly, we could sit and talk here all day. I mean, this is like 3 shows worth. But is there anything before we close out that you want to say? You want a message you want to deliver?
Yes. So visit TampaArtsAlliance.org and please sign up for our newsletters. Also visit our social media accounts and follow us. Really fun is on our Instagram stories. We repost a lot of snapshots of what's happening across Tampa right now, and it's really thrilling to see the diversity of literary arts, dance, performing arts, visual arts, all the arts. They all matter.
Art matters. I
really
totally
does.
agree with you. I like to create art myself, so you know, I've painted, I've done drawing, I've done, so I love the arts. So Michele, I can't thank you enough for being my guest today on Connecting with Kim.
Thank you.
If you're just joining us, Michele Smith, the Executive Director of the Tampa Arts Alliance, was our guest today on Connecting with Kim. That's all we have time for today, but just watching this episode, you now have more information to make living your best life in our little corner of paradise. So I want to thank you for joining me today on TBAE. Come back again next week for another edition.